Hello and welcome back. I'm Dean Berman from Berman Buys. This week I wanted to talk about something different and haven't talked about it for a while, which is homelessness, but wanted to bring it up this week and sort of discuss some articles and information I've come across that I've scoured over the last few months, and I just wanted to give a summary on some of this information because I think it's really interesting and important to understand living in Australia. There's three key points or topics that I wanted to talk about. The first is some figures, some of them quite alarming. The second is just some interesting ideas that some people have, about how to potentially reduce homelessness in Australia. And the third thing is some interesting projects that have gone on or going on, just to spur some ideas in the space. So firstly, just wanted to talk about some facts and figures. And some of these are quite alarming, but I thought interesting or important to understand because I didn't know them myself. So in 2021, interestingly, there were actually 424 deaths from people directly related or who were, considered homeless in Australia. This is actually a figure that's not, interestingly, it's not actually recorded by the government, which I think is quite interesting and surprising. I can't actually recall who provided this figure, but they had to do a lot of research and they had to cross-reference databases and checks and hospitals and medicals reports and so on to come up with this figure. Quite alarming. Another really interesting figure, not interesting, but sad figure is Victoria actually spends a lot more per capita on homeless services than in New South Wales. So in Victoria, they spend roughly $50 per person per day on homelessness services. But in New South Wales, we only spend about $35 per person per day. Not sure why that is. I guess it's state government related policies and procedures and so on. But I think it would be pretty cool if New South Wales could increase that to that higher level, because you would assume then that more services per person or more dollars spent per person could maybe create possibly better results. Another thing I didn't know, which is probably one of the most alarming figures I've come across, is that roughly 40% of homelessness in Australia is actually people under the age of 25. 40% are under the age of 25, which is basically saying that roughly 40,000 people in Australia that are homeless are under the age of 25. There's roughly over 100,000 homeless in Australia, so that's a known stat. But I didn't actually realize that youth homelessness was such a huge impactor in Australia. And lastly, one of my last things that I came across, just looking at some notes that I put down here, was it. This figure basically said that it takes, on average, someone that becomes homeless, out of 20,000 respondents. So once again, it was a survey that was done. 20,000 respondents responded, and from that, they basically were able to create averages and figures on their responses. And one of the figures was that if an individual becomes homeless, it can take them up, on average, 3.8 years to stay in that way, to stay homeless. And for families, it reduces by about half, so 1.9 years for families. Like 1.9 years, it's pretty intense figures. I just wanted to talk about some ideas about homelessness before I talk about construction or some things that are going on, the interesting things that have gone on recently. There was this one interesting article I read which talked about homes versus housing, and it comes back to the whole debate about should we be discouraging property investment in the country versus should we be encouraging home ownership. Property investment, I see many investors on a daily basis, and it's very important for many clients in particular to do that for their own journey and so on. But I'm not going to really talk about that side of things. But I guess what I'm going to talk about more so is the home ownership side. And some of the points the article was talking about was how to increase home ownership in the country. Because currently we're at about 65% of the country owns their own property. And the article was talking about how the goal would be to get that up to 80%. And how do you do that? And it was talking about, things like providing very, very low interest rates to first home buyers, enabling them to, get into the market with very, very low rates and encouraging them, to be able to actually buy. It also talked about, what else? I guess just state government or government related policies to obviously encourage this and help, first home buyers, get into the market and have, the ability to actually do that. So I think that's a really interesting point. And there's many ideas in there. I don't know them all. I can't think of them all at the time, but I think that's a really interesting idea. Something else which is, I can't see this working in Australia, but it also talked about rent reform. What that basically means is they're talking about in many Scandinavian countries, they tie their rents, they basically lock their rents at a fixed rate. So the article gave an example of 4%. Based on the value of the home plus the land, so basically the combined total improvements value of house and land, and working out the 4% rate of that. So let's just say it's $1 million property, 4% of that is $1 million of house and land, 4% of that is $40,000 a year. So what they're basically saying is you keep that fixed for a period of time into the future, say 10, 20 years, which seems like a long time to fix a rate. Looking at it from an investor's perspective, seems like a very long time to fix it. However, for renters, this comes back to affordability and helping people be able to actually get a property. And from that perspective, you can obviously see the benefit on that side of things, because I guess people have peace of mind knowing what they're going to be paying. But from an investor's perspective, so there's two sides to this. The investor's perspective, it's I guess no investor wants to earn less than they could. I guess there's positive benefits from the social side of things, where you're helping someone, pay a lower rate, potentially like 10 years down the track, whereas, it could have been much higher. But yeah, just some ideas there that I came across, talking about how to, I guess, firstly help home ownership increase, and also how to help people that, are struggling to get into a rental property, potentially have more peace of mind and security into the future. And then lastly, there was two interesting other articles I saw which were talking about, there was an article largely talking about older women that face homelessness in the country. And I'm not sure if these are private companies that are doing this, but the article talked about how there was an example of a site in Maroubra where they're building 35 to 50 square meter studios. I think this was a building of 10 or so in the project. And very interesting that, self-contained studios, bedroom, bathroom, kitchenette, and then there was like a communal, I think, outdoor green space or something like that. So what the whole purpose of that is to give, older ladies that may have, whatever reason, don't have a house, it could be domestic violence, it could be, some other things, giving them the ability to actually have their own space. And I think, it looked like a really interesting idea, and hopefully there's more of that, and it seems to be happening in many other areas as well. I think it talked about areas like Marylands and Penrith and a few other areas in Western Sydney and possibly southwestern Sydney. But yeah, very interesting. But I'll lastly finish on a very interesting sort of community campaign that was done in Byron Bay. The project, this was for a centre called Fletcher Street Cottage. So it's like this little, it was a council-owned building that once upon a time was used, I believe, for homelessness services and so on. I don't know how many years it's been vacant for, but it seems like it's been a while due to funding issues, just left to sort of disrepair. And recently, in light of what's been happening with the floods and COVID and everything like that, and also in Byron, massive property price rises have created a lot of upward pressure and made it very hard for people in the area to, number one, even be able to get a rental property, to be able to buy a property. Many people are living in cars and vans and things like that. So, this sort of service in that area is really crucial. And they created a campaign to raise money. They actually raised over $400,000 from over 200 donors, which is amazing. Pretty cool. And lots of tradies and people provided their time and effort and expertise to, make this what was once, it seems like a fairly rundown council centre into this really, beautiful more modern sort of community centre for people that need it, and now they have the services and so on to help people in need, which I think is pretty cool. So I guess some thoughts there, and just some information regarding homelessness. So hopefully just gives you a bit more idea on some points that are going on there, and speak to you soon.